Good evening, everyone and everything who listens to this station, Oatstralia on Air, with your host Golden Microphone for FanFiction Fridays. It has been a little while since the last time we'd seen each other. Yes, indeed it has been. 2 weeks, I believe. At that point, I had only read one chapter of one story of Age. We've all been trying to get used to new transitions here at Oatstralia on Air, and I, as the head of the place, am at the brunt of it. I'm trying to make sure that my crew are just about ready to make all the new necessary changes. Not that I've told them yet, but I will be telling them eventually. Namely, it'll be about a new kind of streaming service for all of you, and just how much better everything's going to get after this. Well, soon enough anyway. I'm hoping to move this station, actually, yes, from its inaugural home here on Ustream.tv, over to, I believe we'll try Livestream.com, a more mainstream place to be, but a little more accessible for everybody, I think. Of course, I will run it past everyone, and that will be splendid. In news, believe it or not, one of our rising stars, Banished Tracks, has actually been given an offer from Lunar Radio to do his show, Who the Buck Are You, on their station. I, of course, being the gracious host that I am, said yes. This will help Banish get himself more known throughout the fandom, and it'll provide a lot more opportunities for him to grow. We here at Oatstralia on Air support our hosts. And in this case, Banish Tracks, good luck to you. Not that I haven't already said that, but it's nice to get some public approval. You guys should show him your love too by posting to the Oatstralia on Air fan page on Facebook and tell him good luck. Let's see. Yes, in other news, Koroshi-Ya recently released his newest EP, Save the Fandom Y2KY. And let me tell you, it's pretty darn good. We'll be featuring some of the music from there a little later on in the show, possibly after the first story. I've also been given a new story to read out. Apparently, the story itself is, well, has a run of hardcover books. Hardcover copies, I mean. I have no idea what it's going to be like, but we'll be reading it cold, here on Oatstralia on Air Live on FanFiction Fridays. Right now, it's time to get ourselves settled in for the night. Get yourselves your hot mugs of chocolate. Rest your feet, rest your weary heads, and get yourselves ready for the first story of the night, of Age, Chapter 2. The train ride to Canterlot seemed to stretch on much longer than usual. Rarity never allowed herself to slouch in public, but it was getting hard to stay upright. She'd had to wake up extra early to catch the first train out so that she could reach the palace by noon. Her eyelids drooped, and she could feel her shoulders threatening to go next. Wake up, Rarity! Who knows who else is on this train right now? You aren't exactly travelling to Appaloosa. The unicorn nonchalantly glanced around the train, wondering if there was any pony important she could recognize by sight. No pony stood out, but that didn't mean much. Rarity prided herself on knowing a great deal about the higher end of Canterlot society, but even she couldn't pick out a face to go with every famous name. She stretched her front legs to get the blood flowing and wake up her tired brain. The train rounded a bend, and it looked like they were finally arriving in Canterlot. Oh, thanks Celestia, Rarity thought, then smiled to herself. She could thank Celestia. She'd be meeting her shortly. And then you find out what all this stopping a war business is about. Rarity's smile faltered a little. This was no social call. The train pulled to a stop, and Rarity climbed off it into the bustling Canterlot crowds. She adjusted her saddlebag and then began to walk to the palace. "Rarity!" A familiar voice called out. Before she'd even managed to take 2 steps, Rarity turned, her mouth falling open. "Shining armor?" The captain of the royal guard trotted toward her from farther down the walkway. "I'm so glad I found you. Princess Celestia's been waiting, and I was worried I'd missed you getting off the train." "Waiting?" "Oh, no, I'm so sorry," Rarity said. "Celestia's been waiting?" Her face paled at the thought. "I do hope I'm not late." "You aren't," Shining Armor clarified, "but the train was. Do you know what's going on?" "Going on?" Rarity asked. Shining Armor began to walk at a brisk pace, and Rarity had to trot to keep up. Most unladylike, but perhaps she made up for her rushed appearance by being in the company of the captain of the royal guard and the newest member of the royal family. "Yes," Shining Armor said. "No pony here has any idea why the bridge over Bumblebee River has collapsed, or why the tracks out near Green Palm Grove have been smashed up, but it's diverting all the trains through Canterlot and backing everything up." "Oh my, that does explain why our little trip took extra long this morning," Rarity mused, "though I can't say I have the faintest idea why there's been so much destruction in the east." She looked away from Shining Armor, keeping her expression hidden for fear of betraying what her actual thoughts on the incidents were. So Celestia hasn't voiced her concerns even to her own nephew-in-law? Rarity filed that bit of information away, wondering just who Celestia had told about the brewing war. They continued through Canterlot, approaching the castle gardens. "So, what's my sister been up to in Ponyville? I haven't heard from her in a while," Shining Armor said, changing the subject. "Twilight's been quite busy," Rarity explained for her friend. "I'm sure she wishes she could have more time to visit and write, but Princess Celestia's given her a large assignment that takes up nearly all of her time lately. She's been a little stressed out, and I'm sure she's completely thrilled about it." Shining Armor laughed. "She's always happiest when she's got some huge deadline looming and too much work to do." Rarity laughed in return. They passed through the castle gates. "That's Twilight, all right," she agreed. The guards gave Shining Armor a salute as he walked by. "So what's she doing for the princess?" he asked next. "Some sort of scroll translation from what I can tell. Something about ancient star alignments or some such. It all seems very tedious," Rarity replied. "Right up her alley." Shining Armor nodded. "Indeed," Rarity agreed. "And how's Spike? I felt bad that we never got much of a chance to talk at the wedding," Shining Armor said. "Little guy used to be my best bud around here. Always hanging around Twilight and Princess Celestia. He didn't really have much of a father figure. He'd trail after me, though." The stallion chuckled to himself. Always asking questions, wanting to see what he could help out with. Rarity couldn't help but smile at the mental image Shining Armor's words painted. "It's wonderful he had some pony like you to look out for him when he was young. He's doing well in Ponyville, I dare say. I don't think Twilight could do without him." "I don't doubt that," Shining Armor said. They rounded the corner, heading up the castle stairs. "Does he ever get a chance to hang out with other ponies? Twilight was never very good about sharing his time after he became her assistant." "Why, yes, sometimes," Rarity replied. They reached the castle doors, and the guards magicked them open. "He frequently visits me at my shop, and visits other ponies too," she added quickly. "Good, good," Shining Armor said thoughtfully. They walked into the main hall. Princess Celestia sat at her throne at the far end, and Rarity had to admit she was a bit disappointed at the timing. She wondered if she could talk to Shining Armor some more later about Spike's early life in Canterlot. It was something she'd never heard much about. "I'll leave you now," Shining Armor said, bowing to her and cutting off her train of thought. "Please send my best wishes to Cadence," Rarity replied. "I will." "Welcome, Rarity," Princess Celestia called, her voice echoing in the large hall. Rarity nodded a polite goodbye to Shining Armor, then turned and walked down the garishly bright red carpet towards the princess. "I do apologize for being late," Rarity said. "Thank you for your invitation, Your Highness." She bowed low to the floor, averting her eyes from the overly dyed carpet. "Please, Rarity, rise," Princess Celestia said. "You're a guest of honor here, as always." Rarity stood up straight, looking at the princess and feeling a pang of jealousy for her fabulously flowing mane. No matter how stressed out Princess Celestia was, her mane was always perfect. "There's no time to waste," the princess continued, rising up off her throne with to her hooves. "We must speak at once, in private." She turned and walked down the stairs to the side of her throne. "And here we go," Rarity thought, setting her shoulders. "I doubt whatever I'm about to hear will make it any easier to decline the princess's request." Rarity followed the princess into a small back room, keeping her head held high, despite her reservations about everything going on. An ornamental wooden table sat in the center, with an old map spread out over it. Rarity peered at it, curious. Princess Celestia spun to face Rarity. "Rarity, before we speak of anything further, I must ask, just what would you be willing to do to stop a war?" Her eyebrows furrowed as she looked down at Rarity to await an answer. Rarity bit her lower lip thoughtfully. It was a fairly loaded question. "Well," Rarity began slowly, "I would, of course, do everything I could. That is to say, everything I personally could. I'm not much of a soldier, so I wouldn't be interested in using physical violence or whatnot, as I'm sure there are far better candidates than me for that sort of thing. But if a war could be won with a finely sewn evening gown, I would of course be your mare. Though I know that's not all that you're asking of me." Rarity paced across the room to give her nervous hooves something to do. "You wish for me to act as an ambassador of sorts, correct?" She looked up at the princess. Princess Celestia nodded. "If there truly is no pony else better suited to the task, then it would be most wrong of me to refuse the job," Rarity said, going back to her pacing. "Though if I would be gone for a considerable amount of time, I would need to close up my shop. It would make paying the bills a bit trickier without a steady income from sales and consignments. But of course, these trifles would be nothing compared to those that a war would cause. I'm certain I could convince Fluttershy to watch Opal during my absence, and I would need to remind my parents that I would be out, so they would not send Sweetie Belle over. So you'd be willing to spend time away on a journey?" Princess Celestia asked carefully. "Yes. Rarity nodded. To that much she could agree. "What about participating in negotiations?" That part was a little trickier. I I'm not certain," Rarity answered truthfully. She'd been thinking about it ever since she received the princess's letter. "I've never been trained in diplomacy, though I fancy myself a genteel enough pony to handle delicate situations. This situation, however, well, it's, well, you understand, it's much larger. I'm honestly not sure how I will approach it, but I suppose I'd be willing to try." "I would be greatly appreciative if you would try," Princess Celestia said. Her tone was grim. "There hasn't been a war on this scale for centuries, if it does indeed come to pass. No pony would be prepared for the devastation. No pony would be guaranteed safety. This war must be stopped." Rarity blinked, unable to form a response. No pony safe. Images of her friends and family surfaced in her mind. Sweetie Belle, Fluttershy, Pinkie Pie, Spike. Celestia walked over to the map on the table. "You see, the sea serpents have control over the world's waterways, except for the few they've allowed for our use in Equestria and a handful of other nations. The dragons claim the land, save, once again, for the land various countries have negotiated from them. The sea serpents and dragons have a truce on grounds that are 50 yards from the water's edge. Both species share those regions, and have for nearly as far back as I can remember. But now, the dragons claim to have discovered an ancient scroll that deems the entirety of the land all the way to the water's edge as their property, and their property only. No pony has yet to see this scroll, because each of my ambassadors has been rebuffed and sent away. Likewise, we've been unable to speak to the sea serpents to see if we can aid them in their talks with the dragons. They too seem to see little value in our offers to help. They've told us repeatedly that it's their problem to fix, and ponies should not get involved. Princess Celestia traced out the run of Bumblebee River. But their conflict is already encroaching upon our territory. We cannot stay out of this any longer. In my last correspondence with the sea serpents, they mentioned that there was one pony to whom they would consider speaking. Princess Celestia glanced over at Rarity. Me, Rarity whispered. Precisely, the princess said with a nod. They say that your generosity and reasonability is legend, and that if any pony can help win their land back for them, it will be you. Rarity stared at the map. Bumblebee River ran to the west. One of its tributaries ran through the Everfree Forest, feeding the reservoir in Ponyville. Why do they need the land? She asked. Do they not live in the water all the time? Sea serpents must lay their eggs and hatch them on dry land, Princess Celestia explained. I am uncertain as to how or why a deal would have been struck at any time in history that would force the sea serpents to give up their access to the land. It is critical to their existence. Rarity took a deep breath. All right, she said, staring at the Ponyville Reservoir on the map. I'll go. I'll do what I can. Princess Celestia's whole body relaxed in relief. I was hoping you would agree. Thank you, Rarity. I shall go back to Ponyville and gather my things. Perhaps I could ask some of my friends to accompany me. Celestia shook her head. No friends. No other ponies. No other... Rarity stared up at the princess. No other ponies. And I suppose asking if Spike could come as my helper is out of the question, what with the sea serpents hating the dragons right now and everything. All right, then. She regained her composure. Then I expect you'll be selecting some guards to escort me. Unfortunately, no. Princess Celestia interrupted again. I wish I could, more than anything. But the sea serpents were very clear. Only you. Rarity's mouth fell open. Gaping like a school filly wasn't very becoming of a lady like herself, but she couldn't help it. I am truly, truly sorry. Princess Celestia's eyes swam with apologies. I'll be sending a small group of guards to follow you at a distance, but that's the best I can do. Rarity nodded slowly. All right. You're a brave mare, Rarity, Princess Celestia acknowledged. Your courage will be rewarded. Now please, allow me to spend the rest of the day imparting to you as much information as I possibly can and preparing you in the art of negotiation with these two cultures. Of course, Princess, Rarity agreed. What else could she say? The train ride back to Ponyville took just as long as the ride out the day before. Rarity stumbled into a shop mid-afternoon and collapsed on her sofa. What have I gotten myself into? She rolled over and stared up at the ceiling. The curtains were drawn, so there was only a faint, almost greyish light illuminating everything around her. She hadn't realized her blue curtains would result in such an awful hue when they blocked the sunlight. Rarity made a mental note to change them as soon as she got back from her trip. She sighed and rolled back over to her side. After all that she'd gone through yesterday, she still had no answer from the princess about the way dragons age. You'll be seeing plenty of them soon enough, Rarity thought to herself, tracing one hoof along the sofa cushion. After you walk right into their war zone and try to talk some sense into these creatures, maybe one of them will be polite enough to answer your questions. Rarity groaned dramatically, burying her head under the sofa pillow. Unlikely, she sniffed. Spike is the only dragon I've ever seen who had any sense of propriety and kindness. She allowed herself several more minutes of sulking, but then dragged herself back to her hooves to stand up. There was packing to do, after all. Oh, hi, Rarity, Twilight said, answering her library door. Spike bolted upright from his seat at the kitchen table. He set down the series of parchments Twilight had given him to alphabetize, hopped off his stool, and quickly made his way to the main library. Rarity! He exclaimed, smiling wide. Hi! Rarity nodded in his direction. Hello, Spike, she said. She looked back and forth between him and Twilight. I've just come by to let you both know that I'm going to be out of town for several days on business. Back to Camelot like yesterday? Twilight asked. Rarity gone? For days? Spike's stomach sank, and he tried not to shuffle his feet too dejectedly as he walked over to Twilight's side. No, Rarity said. Somewhere else. Princess Celestia has asked for my help with something, but I'm not at liberty to say what exactly. Oh, mysterious! Twilight replied brightly. But at least with you gone, Spike will actually be around here more often, and can help me with the scroll translations the princess entrusted to me. The purple unicorn winked down at Spike, and Spike raised an eyebrow. Scroll translations. Goody? He replied. Both ponies laughed, and Spike felt his stomach lift back up again. Making Rarity smile had to be his favorite thing in the whole wide world. Anyhow, I just wanted to pass the word along, Rarity continued. Opalescence is staying with Fluttershy, and Applejack's promised to keep an eye out for Sweetie Belle when my parents need a sitter. Can I do anything to help? Spike asked, stepping forward. Yeah, please let us know if you need anything else taken care of, Twilight said. That's very generous of you both, but I think everything is all in order, Rarity replied. Though, if you wouldn't mind, perhaps one of you might check in on the shop every few days, just to make sure nothing's broken into or anything like that. Absolutely, Spike agreed quickly. I'm your guy. I'll stop by every morning and every night. Rarity looked down at him, her eyes softening. Thank you, Spike. Spike stared back up at her, swallowing his emotion. Are you going to be gone very long? He asked. I'm not sure, Rarity said in return, her eyebrows knitting together ever so slightly. It may be quite a while. How long's a while? Spike wondered. Honestly, it may be weeks, or more, Rarity answered his unspoken question. Weeks? To his horror, Spike felt tears spring to his eyes at that news. No crying! Oh, for Celestia's sake, Spike, keep it together! Rarity's own eyes looked a little watery in turn. Spike wondered if he'd be allowed to give her a goodbye hug. If Twilight would only leave for just a moment. Well, good luck, Rarity, Twilight said. We're going to really miss you around here. I hope you're able to come back soon. Absolutely, Rarity said, smiling at Twilight. I will be back as soon as I can. She looked back at Spike. There was a silence for several moments. Spike continued to mentally will Twilight to leave, but she just stood there next to him. Come on, Twilight, he begged silently. Twilight clearly wasn't reading his mind like Rarity had. Rarity opened her mouth as if to say something else, but then closed it again. So, are you going to say goodbye, or are you just going to stand there, Spike? Twilight teased. Spike flushed. I'm going to say goodbye, Spike insisted. Well, that is... Oh, Spike. Rarity laughed lightly. You're too much sometimes. I'll miss you, you know. I'll miss you, he replied, looking up at Rarity. Good luck on your trip. Thank you, she said. Then after one more moment's hesitation, Rarity turned to leave. I'll call on you both when I return, she told them as she walked away. Spike's lip trembled a bit. Okay, lover boy, Twilight poked Spike in the side. Don't get too crushed. She'll be back. Spike swallowed, staring after Rarity's retreating form. Besides, she said she'll miss you, Twilight pointed out, so I'm sure she'll think about you while she's gone. Spike looked up at Twilight. Really? He asked. His frustration with her for not giving him and Rarity a moment alone disappeared rapidly. You really think so? Sure, Twilight replied. I've known Rarity a long time now. It's obvious she cares for you a great deal and values your friendship. Spike looked back out the library door. Rarity was gone. She cares for me, he repeated. Twilight tugged on his shoulder. So instead of wallowing in sadness, how about we go be productive? Those scrolls aren't going to translate themselves. Spike shook his head, clearing it. Right, he said, then followed Twilight back into the library. What you packing for? Rarity jumped. She spun to the voice behind her. Sweetie Belle! Mom and Dad says you're going away for a while, the little filly said, trotting into Rarity's bedroom. Where are you going? You startled me, Rarity exclaimed. Please remember to knock in the future. At the front door, she stressed, to make it perfectly clear. You can't just let yourself into some pony else's home. But you're my sister. Sweetie Belle cocked her head to one side. Yes, well... Rarity trailed off, using her magic to recollect the blanket she'd dropped in the midst of folding. All the more reason. That doesn't make any sense, Sweetie Belle pointed out. Then she walked over to Rarity's dresser, and Rarity had to dash over, snatching up the map that she'd had laying out next to a lantern. Some privacy, Sweetie Belle, please! Rarity hastily shoved the map into her saddlebags, which sat on her bed half-packed. Why are you going to the eastern border? Sweetie Belle asked. Rarity shot her sister a glare. Who told you that? The filly shrugged. Your map. Rarity groaned, tilting her head back in exasperation. This is exactly why you need to be more respectful. My trip is none of your business, and I would appreciate it if you would quit snooping. Sweetie Belle blinked. I wasn't snooping. Your map was out for any pony to see. No, it wasn't, Rarity explained, magicking the folded blanket into a bag. It was in my private bedroom inside my private house. Sorry, Rarity. Rarity narrowed her eyes at her sister. She didn't sound sorry. Sweetie Belle trotted over to her bed next. Can I help you pack? No, thank you, Rarity replied. She didn't care how haughty her voice sounded. She was tired, stressed, and emotionally spent. You should really be getting home. It's almost dark. I guess. Sweetie Belle kicked one hoof along the floor. Then her ears perked up and her eyes widened. Oh! I could come back in the morning to help. No, Rarity said firmly. Though it wouldn't matter if she did, I'll be gone by then. She planned on leaving under the cover of darkness, so no pony would see which way she was going. Most every pony assumed she was going back to Canterlot for business, and she didn't need any pony asking why she was heading south instead of north. Not to mention why she wasn't catching any train. Just leave, please. Aw, Sweetie Belle pouted. Fine then, I just wanted to help. I know, Sweetie Belle, Rarity sighed, magically picking up her hairbrush and comb. But there just won't be anything for you to do for me in the morning. All right. Sweetie Belle slumped her shoulders, watching Rarity pack her brush and comb in the side pouch of her saddlebags. I'll get going then. Hope you have a good trip. She dragged her hooves to the door, and it suddenly dawned on Rarity that this would be the last time she'd see her sister for some time. A war where no pony would be safe. The princess's words echoed in her mind. Sweetie Belle, wait! Rarity called, trotting after her. Her sister turned, and Rarity pulled her in for a hug. Be good while I'm away, all right? Don't give Mom and Dad too much trouble. Sweetie Belle hugged her sister back. Don't worry about me, Rarity. I'm a big filly, and you'll see I'm going to prove to you just how mature and helpful I can be. Ow! That was my hoof! Spike sat up in bed, awakened by the voices outside. You sure she went this way? Absolutely. Cutie Mark Crusaders! Pony trackers! Shh! That didn't sound good. It was 1 a.m. What were those three doing up, much less wandering outside of the library at this hour? Twilight? Spike called. His adoptive sister was fast asleep in her bed, zonked out after another night of scroll translation. He poked her a little. Twilight, I'm going to go check on something outside, okay? What? Twilight asked, blinking a little. Spike? I'm going to go check on something outside, okay? Spike repeated. I thought I heard voices. Twilight's eyes were already closed again. That's nice, Spike. Let me know if Mars is set yet. Sure. Spike rolled his eyes a little. He pulled Twilight's blanket up over her more, tucking in the sides. There wasn't any time to waste beyond that. The fillies' voices were getting farther and farther away. Spike jogged down the stairs and out the front door into the dark. Which way? A gaggle of giggles answered his question. He ran in its direction as fast as his little feet could carry him. For a while, he was worried he'd lost them, but then after what seemed like an eternity of running, another burst of giggles sounded, followed by an annoyed complaint. "Will you two cut it out?" Sweetie Belle. He knew that voice. Spike dashed along in the direction of the sounds, nearing the edge of Ponyville. "You're going to give us away!" Sweetie Belle insisted. "So where do you think your sister's going?" "No idea," Sweetie Belle replied, "but I knew she wasn't leaving in the morning. Rarity would never pack up a hairbrush a full night before starting a trip. Plus, her lantern was out on her table with that map." "But why would she go into the Everfree Forest all alone at night?" "The Everfree Forest!" Spike's eyes flew wide open. "Rarity, no, not at night!" "Yeah, I thought only Rainbow Dash was brave enough for that sort of thing." "That's what I want to find out," Sweetie Belle explained, her voice growing fainter. Spike had to jog faster to keep up with them. How the three fillies were moving so quickly, he had no idea. All he knew was that he had to catch up, and then... Spike grimaced, racing past Fluttershy's cottage into the edges of the wild forest after the little ponies. "I need to bring them home, but that leaves Rarity all alone in the Everfree Forest." He ran faster. "I'll figure it out once I've caught up with them." "Whoa! Whoa!" Scootaloo yelled from ahead somewhere amidst the darkened trees. "Hey, let us go!" Spike gasped. A huge winged creature rose up into the air over the tree line. From its claws it dangled Scootaloo's scooter and wagon, with all three fillies hanging on desperately. "Help!" Spike's heart dropped in his chest at the sound of their screams. "No!" he shouted, but the creature was already flying away, deep into the forest, with Scootaloo, Applebloom, and Sweetie Belle in tow. Cliffhanger! That's the end of Chapter 2 of Age. Written by Paleo Writer, available on fanfiction.net, and down in the description below if you're listening to this on YouTube later. Right now, though, we have ourselves a little bit of a break. And we're going to start it off with Koroshi-Ya's newest EP, starting with Y2KY Save the Fandom, followed by Feel the Bass. You're listening to Oatstralia on Air Live. This is FanFiction Fridays with yours truly, Golden Microphone. Enjoy Koroshi-Ya.
I'm back. The time is coming, I have risen once again. The viciousness and ruthlessness is ever present, never seeing an end. I'm vigilant, sifting through the withered scenes and shattered dreams, standing tall for the underdogs who get to feel the gleam. The ones who hold them down are the ones that I despise. You've never seen hunger like you have in a rookie's eyes. This ain't corporate, taking matters to our own hands. Everything's gonna change because we got plans. Since day one, we have never been considered poster children. We never fit the mold of what you said. Well, that's all about to change. Why? Revolution, motherfucker. Revolution. Standing tall with a mission in my head like bringing a knife into a gunfight. I'm a leader, never was a tandem. Because I'm here and I'm gonna save the fandom. We are the future like hell, that we're a footnote. A new generation with a new story to be wrote. So raise your fist and let them hear you all now. This is the day of the underdog. To everybody scream, yeah. Standing tall with a mission in my head like bringing a knife into a gunfight. I'm a leader, never was a tandem. Because I'm here and I'm gonna save the fandom. Straight up high, they can't ignore us anymore. The revolution is now, we're gonna take them to the floor. Never fit the public mold of what they wanted us to be. Didn't dress, walk, talk, act like a fucking prodigy. The lesser known time is here and we're rewriting the books. We're changing all the standards from the sounds to the looks. It doesn't matter if you're popular, that dies today. You either put up or shut up or lead the way. So you say that numbers put you above everyone else, that it makes you all the best in the fandom by comparison. Well, let me tell you something. Numbers make you a statistic. We have the talent, we have the proof. Together we are the best in the fandom. Standing tall with a mission in my headlights, like bringing a knife into a gunfight. I'm a leader, never was a tandem, because I'm here and I'm gonna save the fandom. We are the future, like hell, that we're a footnote. A new generation with a new story to be wrote. So raise your fist and let them hear you all now. This is the day of the underdog, so everybody scream yeah. Standing tall with a mission in my headlights, like bringing a knife into a gunfight. I'm a leader, never was a tandem, because I'm here and I'm gonna save the fandom. And our time is now.
Go.
We only got one life, that's all we got this night. We gonna live it right, our names in glowing light. We jamming all damn day, we'll rock the night away. The feeling's here to stay, just ain't no other way. Another track, no smack attack, we back in black or gray, we stack. Hitting these beats, we living large, you know we standing tall and charged. I hold this mic, I'm a fucking messiah, high on a word that I never deny ya. Count that begins, let's fill the room and blast them all with the clearest day. Feel the bass in, yeah, feel the motherfucking. Everybody out there, feel the motherfucking. Living by the night, ain't looking for a fight, cause I'm the party type. Rockin' zebra stripes, you hear my heart and soul, it never takes its toll. Like living on parole, excitement's the only goal. Right now, stories in the pavement tiles, riding this as we go for miles. The energy around keeps us alive, passion and excitement you can't deprive. We got one life and we live it today like hell. If they did, they go stand in the way. The count that begins, let's fill the room and blast them all with the clearest day. Feel the bass in, yeah, feel the motherfucking. Everybody out there, feel the motherfucking. Feel the bass in, yeah, feel the motherfucking. Everybody out there, feel the motherfucking.
Welcome back to FanFiction Fridays with Golden Microphone here on Oatstralia On Air. You were just listening to parts of Koroshi-Ya's newest EP release, Save the Fandom Y2KY, starting with Y2KY Save the Fandom and finishing off with just then Feel the Bass. Absolutely brilliant stuff from Koroshi-Ya, only recently releasing that this week. You can check out the Bandcamp and where you can get this particular where you can get this EP from in the description below. Right now though, we are going to get ourselves into the next story, and that'll be the last one for the night. This is called Twilights List. It was recommended to me by one Andre Tay. I'm fairly sure I'm saying that right, T-E-H. Te? Anyway, recommended to me by Andre, thank you very much. Apparently this particular story has a hardcover release, so an actual physical book. So you can check that out soon. Right now we're going to do a cold reading of it. This is Twilight's List by Kits, and it's available on fanfiction.net and in the description below. For those of you who are listening right now, you're finding the link for it to read along in the social stream. Here we go then. I'll read the blurb and then we'll get into the chapters. Twilight's List by Kits. Twilight Sparkle prides herself on following and sticking to her plans, but she isn't as organized as every pony thinks. Her master list, the plan for her life, has an item that she has never been able to check off, and the time has come to fix that. How hard can it be? All she needs to do is go on a date and get a kiss. I do believe we are looking at a shipfic. Well, here we go then. Chapter 1. The Unchecked Item. Oh, there are illustrations to go with this thing. Hang on a sec. Let's see if I can get these up on the screen for you. Let's have a look. Yeah, there we go. Get a load of that. Yep. That's adorable. That is adorable. Let's see how much of it I can read before I, run out of space. Oh, I suppose I better change that title too. And there we go. That's better. I suppose I totally forgot to actually do this for Of Age too, didn't I? Oh well, I'll fix that up in the YouTube. Anyway, here we go. Twilight Sparkle hummed happily to herself, her horn glowing with a soft magenta light as she held aloft a fine blue quill and a yellowed, wrinkled scroll. The scroll was long, long enough that it could not be fully unfurled without risking its already tattered and worn surface on the numerous books, chairs, and other objects strewn about the library's floor. Twilight squinted, trying to make out the faded ink in the dying light of the single candle she allowed herself, a concession only granted due to magical exhaustion at the late hour. Her eyes traversed the parchment, stopping midway down at item number 376, a perfect long-range teleportation spell. She brought her quill to her inkwell with exaggerated care and dipped it in. Equal care was given to ensure that no ink dripped from the black tip as she brought it to the scroll. She closed her eyes, and she marked yet another item off the list. A small shudder ran up her legs, across her back, and into her ears. She pulled the quill away and blotted the newly made check mark with fine sand. Unfortunately, I am going to have to scroll up, so we'll just go back to my picture. Yes, that's okay, isn't it? With a satisfied smile, she scanned her completed items, basking in the knowledge that her list and her life were right on track. Until she remembered it. One item that had thwarted and taunted her. A single blank box in a sea of perfectly lined up check marks. Twilight didn't really know why she had added it to the list. A filly's whim, she supposed. Item number 56. Go on a date, obtain first kiss. Her brows creased as she stared at the defiant entry. It had mocked her for 2.5 years now. Twilight gritted her teeth, trying to force the thought of her failure from her mind. Not everything had gone according to plan. Oh, some things had thrown her for a loop and required some liberal reinterpretation, especially after moving to Ponyville. She had yet to attempt some of the newer items she had added to the list, but this was the only remaining item from the original 100 things every filly should do. It was a failure of organization. Without organization came chaos. She'd been using lists of plan and order since before gaining her cutie mark, and they had served her faithfully. Yet, here was this list. Incomplete. Disorderly. And it's high time I did something about that, she proclaimed to no pony in particular. With much less regard than she used for the list, she unfurled a smaller, cleaner scroll and checked "Be Assertive" off of her weekly planner. Plans already beginning to form in her mind, she finished rolling up her list, taking less care than she had previously. She slipped it into a polished wooden case emblazoned with a pink six-pointed star, an exact match to the one adorning her flank. Only then did she use her magic to light the rest of the room's candles. Trotting over to one of the numerous bookcases, she began reading titles, looking for some self-help book on finding a perfect date candidate. How to Lose a Stallion in 7 Days and 21 Dishes He'll Love flew off the shelf and dropped on the floor. It was followed by formal dining guides, which might have been useful for the date itself, but offered no help on who to date. Choosing the perfect calendar. How did this get here? She'd been looking for this one for months. Pulling book after book off the shelves until she had gone through the entire bookcase yielded nothing better than a set of romance novels she wasn't sure should even be in the general audience section. Adding one of the more promising novels about a lonely librarian to her read later stack, she was forced to conclude her shelves lacked any such helpful literature. "That's not going to stop me this time," she growled at fate. It was time to get serious. Since moving to Ponyville less than a year ago, she'd accomplished so many of her goals, some in very surprising ways. She mulled over the various techniques for finding a dating partner she remembered from overheard snatches of conversation. She was no longer a student. Well, she no longer had classmates, nor was she enrolled in any clubs or other social activities with ponies her age. That left two choices: dating a friend or hitting the night scene. The thought of trying to chat up strange ponies in some dimly lit nightclub in Canterlot or Manhattan caused a lump of ice to form in her gut. All those wasted hours spent just seeing if she could get along with a stranger was almost enough for her to give up right there. With all other options exhausted, she turned toward the last source of potential partners. Her friends had helped her learn and achieve so much. Perhaps she could once again rely on them. It shouldn't be that awkward. The list item in question didn't explicitly state romance was required. She really only needed a pony willing to help her out, to go through the motions. Yes, her friends were the answer. Now all that remained was choosing who would be the best candidate. Twilight grabbed a short scroll. This plan would not have as many steps as her usual daily checklists. Her quill made small scraping sounds as she developed her plan. When she was done, she reread the list to ensure no errors were present. Make a list of friends' traits. Decide on whom to date. Ask friend out. Note, this may require additional research. Go on a date. A list of activities will be required. Repeat steps 1 through 4 until kiss is obtained. Finish original list. Talk to Pinkie Pie about party. See standard Pinkie Pie party checklist. Twilight beamed. With this many lists, organization was sure to triumph. Giggling at the exhilaration that came with taking control of her life, she snatched 5 more sheets of paper and inscribed the name of a friend at the top of each. With great care, she drew a vertical line down the center of each sheet of paper, dividing each precisely in half. In one column, she wrote pros, and in the other, cons. Quickly, she began compiling all the positive and negative traits of her friends, with a critical eye toward dateability. She muttered aloud as she wrote, "Pinkie Pie. Pros is a lot of fun to be around. She's always doing something new. Pretty sure it's impossible to really be unhappy around her. Likes cooking, parties, Pinkie sense." Smiling at both her concise list and the thoughts of Pinkie's positive dateability-orientated qualities, she moved over to the cons section. It felt a little odd to be quantifying her friend's flaws, but she pushed that thought away. This was for a good cause. Besides, non-dateability didn't mean they were bad ponies, just ill-suited to helping her. Cons. Hyperactive, unintelligible at times, would drive me mad within 3 days. Too many parties. Pinkie sense. She chewed on the end of her quill, trying to think of any more relevant traits that might tip the balance in Pinky's favor. Unable to really come up with any qualities that outweighed near certain insanity, she reluctantly placed Pinky's list down and swept up Fluttershy's. After a careful moment of thought, she wrote a single line in the con category and put the paper down. She knew that Fluttershy would do anything to help a friend. She would not want to say no, even if she was totally against the idea for fear of hurting Twilight's feelings. Even explaining that this would be strictly scientific would not lessen her friend's distress. It didn't seem fair to place undue stress on such a timid pony. Next up was Rarity. Twilight was able to fill her page on both sides. Generous fought against self-centered. Determined faced off with prissy. Elegant and high maintenance added weight to their respective sides. Twilight struggled to contain all of her various thoughts on the single sheet, writing new traits within the margins and white space between the words. Her candle burned low before she lifted the quill for the final time. She rolled her neck, a small popping sound coming from her stiff muscles. Fighting to contain a yawn, she stared at the near solidly inked scroll. Twilight tried to make a decision one way or another, but for every positive influence there was a negative one lurking, and every time she thought she had finally ruled Rarity out, a redeeming phrase seemed to shine. Gah! She rubbed her temples with her hooves. Why does she have to be this complicated? Brightening immediately, she scrambled to find a piece of space on the right side of a sheet and finally located a small patch of compartment between obsessive-compulsive and anti-green. She wrote, "Too complicated," then smiled as she placed Rarity's list on top of Pinky's and Fluttershy's. Only 2 left. She was more than halfway done. Rarity's ink-soaked sheet stared at her, mocking her hopes of being nearly finished. Hopefully neither Applejack nor Rainbow Dash would be so involved. Grabbing Applejack's, she quickly began to list traits, starting with AJ's trademark honesty and devotion to her friends. Twilight's quill wobbled a bit and caused some spotting as she added athleticism to the prose side. Though she had no intention of taking things beyond a date and first kiss, Twilight blushed, thinking how that trait might come into play in a more serious relationship. She shook her head. Oh, focus, Twilight. Industrious. If there was one thing any pony who knew anything about Applejack knew, it was that she was as hard-working a pony as ever lived. Maybe even a bit too hard-working. Her work often kept her in the fields and orchards when other ponies would have skipped out to visit friends. Simply finding time when she was free would be tough, and getting the apple farmer to do anything she didn't really want to was like moving a mountain. She took pride in her stubbornness. Twilight sat on her haunches to think. Applejack had overcome her bullheadedness when it came to accepting help from her friends, but she was still reluctant to ask for help. It had taken the full force of a hyper Pinkie Pie to get Applejack to open up to them, and it had been entirely due to her family's pride and stubbornness that she had risked the farm in that cider contest. Recalling that it had been her idea to allow Applejack's honorary family to help, Twilight underlined stubborn. Twilight chewed on the tip of her quill once more. It was true that stubbornness was a key trait to her orange friend. Most of the other traits on the paper could be related or traced back to refusing to give in, but Applejack's stubbornness could be a good trait too. She underlined devoted as well. Twilight spent several more minutes racking her brain to come up with anything else to add to the list. She tapped her quill against her desk, scowling when she realized the mess she was making with the ink. She'd have to get Spike to clean that later. Shaking her head, Twilight decided that she had been as thorough as possible. She sighed, tension flowing from her along with her breath. She'd begun to worry that none of her friends would be compatible enough for this task. A tingle ran up her spine as she grabbed for Rainbow's empty sheet. The Pegasus represented the final step to completing Phase 1. Quickly, not caring as much about smudges, she began writing. Loyal, athletic, courageous all went down in the positive traits. Sarcastic, judgmental, and arrogant went into the negatives list. To be fair to her friend, Rainbow had been much less boastful of late. The mysterious ne'er-do-well incident had helped tremendously with that. And as much as Twilight hated to admit it, she was often even more snarky and sarcastic than her friend. She wasn't going to cross those off the list. They were good and valid points, but the ink on the page made them seem so much more negative than they really were. She almost felt she should qualify the points, but could summon up nothing beyond a slightly protective feeling towards the Pegasus. Twilight closed her eyes, rubbed her forehead with a hoof, struggling to contain yet another yawn. Surely she had more to say about her friend? Well, Dash was undeniably cool, but was that a trait that mattered? Twilight wanted to write it down, but the analytical side of her mind just couldn't justify cool as a date-orientated quality. She tried approaching it from a different angle, but still couldn't see a functional difference between cool, awesome, and radical. There had to be something here. Twilight blinked. During the moment her eyes were closed, she could see Rainbow's air of assurance, the slight spring in her steps, that cocky half-smirk she wore when she was faced with an obstacle, those eyes that welcomed a challenge. Even were she more of a monochrome Dash, Twilight knew she would still command attention. It was just something about the way she moved. Flying or walking, it didn't matter. Confidence! Her inkwell jumped a little as she pounded her hoof into the table. Dash exuded confidence. She was so self-assured about everything she did. Twilight grinned as she wrote. Well, almost everything. There had been her reluctance to read simply because she had viewed it as uncool. Right! Twilight turned and scanned the small piles of books scattered about her study. I need to remember to get the next Danger Mare book out for her. Dash had very good taste in fiction, even if she still shunned non-fiction. Maybe one of the Wonderbolts had written something. That would get her hesitant friend to read a biography if anything could. Twilight placed her final page, Rainbow's page, on top of Applejack's. With renewed energy, she bounded over to a checklist and marked off Phase 1. Score 1 for organization! She double-checked Phase 2, even though it was obvious what she had to do next. Phase 2, she read aloud. Decide on who to date. She stalked back to her desk, narrowing her eyes and keeping her head down low and her hoof steps soft. Moving right up against the side of the desk, slowly, quietly, she raised her head, eyes just peeking up over the surface. She stared at the smaller of the two stacks, Applejack and Rainbow Dash, the two ponies she felt exemplified the traits that her romance novels seemed to indicate would complement her own the most. Applejack, the honest farmer. Rainbow Dash, the exciting flyer. She used her magic to spread the two sheets out in front of her. Twilight peered at the two papers, her eyes narrowing further, taking in each word and weighing it. Both ponies had rough edges that would make dating either one difficult. Both had qualities that many agreed were good traits in a partner. Back and forth between her friends. Applejack seemed to be the better choice. She was simply far more steady and well-grounded than Rainbow Dash, but every time she started to add Rainbow to the pile of discarded papers, she found herself unable to. Flopping onto her back, she stared up at the ceiling. Oh, why does choosing have to be so hard? Her ceiling did not answer. She lay there for several minutes, trying to think of anything but Rainbow Dash and Applejack. No answers came to her. No ideas, no sudden bolts of inspiration materialized inside her head. She sighed and rolled over, a book digging into her side as she gathered her hooves under her. She picked it up and read the title by the light of her own levitation spell. It was the first novel in one of her favorite adventure series, Daring Do. Rainbow loved the series as much as she did, and had practically devoured the entire thing during her week of enforced bed rest. How many couples had she read about who started off with nothing more than a shared interest? This was perfect, just the push she needed. Like she had tried to do so many times tonight, she moved one of the two papers back towards the desk, inwardly bracing for the same reticence that had plagued her for the last half-hour. She was pleased and not a little surprised to find she was only felt satisfaction at this choice. With no half-formed thoughts nagging about her decision, she placed Applejack onto the pile with her other 3 friends. Twilight leapt to her hooves, dimples forming as she smiled at her selection. Keeping the all-important paper with her, she skipped back over to her list. Phase 2 complete! She reared back and clapped her front hooves together. Her plan was well on its way. Now she had only to ask the Blue Pegasus on a date. Twilight froze mid-celebration, her jubilant grin falling into a worried frown. Right. She had no real idea how to ask some pony out. Well, more reading was hardly going to stop her now. She stifled yet another yawn. She couldn't sleep yet. There was research to be done, lists to be made, and a rainbow-maned Pegasus to contemplate. Twilight's grin widened as she reminded herself of these 3 points. With a blast of magic, Twilight cleared a large space next to a desk, shoving everything around it back 6 or 7 paces. Her horn flared, outshining the candles as she pulled out every book that had even the smallest hint of romance in it. She would read until she found a perfect solution. Choosing a book at random, she settled in for the long hours of research. Within 20 minutes, a puddle of drool had formed on her desk under her muzzle. The chirping of the birds and her own light snoozing greeted the first fingers of dawn. Let's see, we still have quite a bit of the story left, and we're going to go right ahead and blaze through it. First, though, I think we'll take a very small break and continue on with showing off Koroshi-Ya's newest EP with the song number 4 on the track list, Technicolor Transitions. You're listening to FanFiction Fridays on Oatstralia On Air Live, or YouTube if you're listening later.
Where I gaze, fly away to that place amongst the stars, gone from all of the distaste to the sick and twisted universe I sadly call my own. I'm just one in a billion, and I feel so alone. Many nights feeling constricted with these tear-filled eyes. People begging for a purpose, me, I'm begging for that last ride. I gave it to my demons after all the pain. The voice is still inside and they're conversing with my brain. Nirvana and peace is all that I yearn. Comfort and security is found at a remote turn. Nothing here is how I wanted it to be. I'll lose all of my self-control and fade to insanity. The days turn into months and the months turn into years, and as the time progresses, life is forming all my fears. I wanna close my eyes, this is all a bad dream. Everything is slipping and nothing is how it seems. What do you do when all hope is gone? How do you react when you lose the will to carry on? The slip of a pill, carry me away. A technicolor transition is all I want today. What do you do when all hope is gone? How do you react when you lose the will to carry on? The slip of a pill, carry me away. A technicolor transition is all I want today. I couldn't fight the voices telling me to say no. The urges manifested inside, continuing to grow. I was never one for strength, I couldn't walk alone. A beaten, broken child from a beaten, broken home. No one was ever there to keep me fighting strong. The only ones around were waiting on my swan song. The cuts on my arms, never coming close. Trapped in this existence by a cruel and hollow flesh host. The bottle, the pills, the needles are my only friends. They've been here for me and will be to the very end. Call me pathetic or call me weak. Since I was brought into this life, my future always seemed bleak. They say that fate calls and our times will soon be done. Feeling very soon that my time will come. Goodbye cruel world, the one that never loved me. One final injection hit has set me free. What do you do when all hope is gone? How do you react when you lose the will to carry on? The slip of a pill, carry me away. A technicolor transition is all I want today. What do you do when all hope is gone? How do you react when you lose the will to carry on? The slip of a pill, carry me away. A technicolor transition is all I want today. you do when all hope is gone? How do you react when you lose the will to carry on? The slip of a pill, carry me away. A technicolor transition is all I want today. What do you do when all hope is gone? How do you react when you lose the will to carry on? The slip of a pill, carry me away. A technicolor transition is all I want today. What do you do when all hope is gone? How do you react when you lose the will to carry on? The slip of a pill, carry me away. A technicolor transition is all I want today. What do you do when all hope is gone? How do you react when you lose the will to carry on? The slip of a pill, carry me away. A technicolor transition is all I want today.
If someone is in need of help, always lend out a helping hoof. No matter the task, great or small. We are all a family, and we will all look out for each other. Always and forever. Because undoubtedly there will be times in life where the challenges we are set seem too great for us to take on alone. Do unto others as others do unto you. And know that in your times of weakness, you will never be alone. You will forever be stronger.
Have you ever loved something so much you give your blood and sweat and tears? Something you run to and hide from all of your biggest fears. A blanket as a child or the warmth of a loved one. Clarity and strength within is always second to none. But how would you feel if that blanket was torn from beneath you and the comforts of security were faded over and through your heart? Torn right out of your chest, left to perish in a pool of shame like a mess. I felt crucified, the martyr of an idea. One that only I shared, a feeling that was so clear. Was I foolish to believe that this love was for me? I fell victim to this, I'm only human, kid. Did I think it was the end? Well, I certainly did. Was I not worthy of radiance thrown right off of the grid? I'll make it through this struggle, I'll hear my vow. Because fuck that shit, I can't just give up now. Though the darkest days, they had passed me by. The clouds blotted out the beaming sky. My heart was shattered, it was torn in two. But all of that changed the day I met you. So as I stand up tall and as I sing, you're the wind beneath my broken wings. Yeah, I'm stronger now. Yeah, I'm stronger now. I'm stronger now. Yeah, I'm stronger now. Every ounce of my body was maimed, torn, tattered, and bruised. I felt chewed up by this life, spit out, dazed and confused. I felt ugly, segregated like I didn't fit the mold of society's theater, a disaster to unfold. Wondering if there was any real point of going on. Would my aura be regarded if it ever were to be withdrawn? Would they ever leave roses on my grave? Or was it just a hopeless soul that they couldn't save? That was until one day I fell in these hands, they caught me. They shaded the pain as if they were a marquee. People just like me with the same darkened past. Others like me who had demons that hadn't been. Now as the days go by, your weight has been lifted. Because all these demons I had have since been shifted. My fate doesn't define me, these walls were made to knock down. Tuned into the airwaves, hear the underdogs now. The darkest days, they have passed me by. The clouds blotted out the beaming sky. My heart was shattered, it was torn in two. But all of that changed the day I met you. So as I stand up tall and as I sing, you're the wind beneath my broken wings. Yeah, I'm stronger now. Yeah, I'm stronger now. Yeah, I'm stronger now. Yeah, I'm stronger now. The darkest days, they had passed me by. The clouds blotted out the beaming sky. My heart was shattered, it was torn in two. But all of that changed the day I met you. So as I stand up tall and as I sing, you're the wind beneath my broken wings. Yeah, I'm stronger now. Yeah, I'm stronger now. Yeah, I'm stronger now. Yeah, I'm stronger now.
I love you, Imogen.
And we're back on Oatstralia On Air Live. This is FanFiction Fridays with Golden Microphone. What you just heard were two more tracks from Koroshi-Ya's latest EP, Save the Fandom, Y2KY, starting with Technicolor Transitions and ending with Stronger. Absolutely beautiful stuff. We have one more track, of course, to go through, but that's going to be played at the very end of this show. For now, we continue reading the first chapter of Twilight's List. Rainbow Dash's grin deepened as she started into the last segment of her routine. The world spun, earth and sky flipping wildly as she threw herself through corkscrews and rolls. She flared her wings and backflipped into a dive. The last time she'd tried this, it had put her into a hospital. Not this time. No way. She corkscrewed towards the green field and the 4 ponies sitting on a checkered blanket below. All of her closest friends except Applejack had made it out to this picnic and show to watch her practice. The farm pony had said something about her trees needing to be pruned. Dash tried to snort, but with the wind made it really hard to tell if she had. Pruning apple trees, a likely story. Every pony knew prunes didn't come from apples. Maybe kumquats or something, but not apples. That pony really needed to relax a bit and take some time off. And Rainbow really needed to pay attention to her flight path. Struggling to keep her wings in position and not lose control if she threatened to spin out, Dash pulled herself level with the ground. The bottom of her erratic spiral came within a mere few wingspans of the earth. Fluttershy lay quivering upon the ground, hooves over her eyes, as Rainbow passed overhead. Pinkie Pie took the opposite approach, bounding high into the air and achieving a hang time that would make many of the foals in this year's summer flight camp jealous. For a minute, Dash thought that the pink pony might actually have sprouted wings and taken flight in disregard for reality. Then she passed over the group, hardly able to hear the cheering over the roar of her own windstream. She dipped towards the ground and tightened her roll, bringing her back to face the ground mere hoof-lengths away. Then she dove towards the sky, tucked, flipped, and landed, already halfway into a bow as she did so. "Thank you, she said as her friends cheered and clapped for her. "Rainbow, my dear, that was absolutely stunning. The way your mane and tail flowed was simply marvelous." The white unicorn's eyes drifted upwards, no doubt daydreaming about shoving her into some frilly gown again. "Oh, it was super cool!" Pinkie Pie bounced into the air. "Zoom! Whoosh!" She thrust her hooves left, then right, in a pantomime of Dash's flight, ending with a backward somersault flip and a final whee! "Oh, yes, it was, very nice." Fluttershy offered up a small smile for her fellow Pegasus. "The parts I could watch, that is." Dash smiled and laughed at her friend's enthusiasm. "It's cool, Fluttershy. I know not every pony can deal with displays of such raw speed and talent." Dash reached out with one hoof and gave her reserved friend a quick hug. "It still means a lot that you came out to see me. All of you." She turned to beam at each of her friends for a moment. "Oh, oh, oh, oh!" Pinkie vibrated. "I should totally throw a party for this." "Pinkie Pie, you don't have to throw a party every time I learn a new trick." Dash puffed out her chest and spread her wings. "You'd be throwing them non-stop." "Yeah, but this trick is different. You got really, really hurt last time." Pinkie's ears drooped and her eyes teared up. Then she smiled, her ears perking forward and her tears vanishing. "And this time you didn't! Yay!" Rainbow laughed. She didn't really like being reminded of her failures, but now that she had succeeded in performing the trick, the sting was gone. No pony could learn a new trick without bending a few feathers. "All right, Pinkie, I can't wait." Pinkie Pie zipped off, leaving a curling trail of dirt, dust, and grass clippings billowing outward in her wake. For the first time since Dash had landed, Twilight spoke. "Well, I guess we'd all better go get ready for Pinkie's party." She was met with a chorus of agreements, and they all began trotting back towards the town proper, following the still settling dust trails that Pinkie Pie had left. Living on the outskirts of Ponyville, Fluttershy was the first to peel off from the group. Giving them a soft goodbye, she trotted off toward her home. Dash could have flown up to her house right then, but she was still a bit winded from her performance, and the small talk and chit-chat of her friends was pleasant enough, even if a good half of it covered things she didn't really care much about. She stayed with the group until they got to the center of the village and had to separate. Saying her goodbyes, Dash prepared to take flight and get a quick nap in before the party. "Rainbow, wait!" Dash turned towards Twilight, who hadn't budged since saying goodbye to Rarity. Dash hesitated for a second, then trotted over to her friend. What's up, Twi? Something was a little bit off about the unicorn. Her smile was suspiciously wide, like a used carriage sales pony. Maybe the workout had worn her out more than she thought. Well, Rainbow, I've been going over some notes these last few days, trying to find the perfect way to approach this. See, I've got a new project, and I've been staying up late the last few nights, making plans and compiling lists for each of you. As Twilight rambled on about lists and projects, experiments and data gathering, Dash nodded at what seemed appropriate points. She tried to keep from yawning, but with the thought of a nap already firmly planted in her head, she couldn't help it. She didn't mean to be rude, but when Twilight got on about her charts and the process of elimination, it was hard to pay attention, especially when she really just wanted a muffin and a nap. Giving a little shake of her head, she was surprised to find that she couldn't actually remember what Twilight had just said. The unicorn didn't seem to have noticed. "And you're the most logical match!" Twilight stopped, finally. She smiled and nodded, tilting her chin up and looking very satisfied. "Yeah, look, Twilight, so do you want to go on a date?" Dash froze mid-thought. She must have heard Twilight wrong. Excuse me?" she stammered. "Would you like to go out on a date with me sometime?" Twilight asked. This wasn't right. Ponies didn't just walk up to their friends and ask them out. Despite her best efforts, Dash had picked up that much from Rarity. Twilight should have stammered or mumbled or tried to spend a lot of time alone with her until Dash got the hint and made the first move, or maybe collected and obsessed over her discarded feathers. She should have pawed at the ground and blushed. Ponies asking their friends out on dates did not just stand there looking like they were talking about the weather schedule. She should be bouncing from hoof to hoof or ready to run away the second Dash opened her mouth. Maybe because Twilight wasn't nervous. Certainly not because she was nervous. Dash's wings rose off of her back, her fight or flight instincts rapidly heading for the flight option. She couldn't just run off, though. One, that was not cool. It was the total opposite of cool. Anti-cool. Two, how could she live with herself if she just left Twilight standing there? She owed her friend an answer. She opened her mouth to reply, but had no idea what she was going to say. She tried again, and once more was speechless. Neither a "yeah, sure" nor a "sorry, Twi" could be forced out. In Equestria needed more time. Twilight, isn't this a little, sudden? She pleaded for understanding as she stalled. The smartest pony knew didn't disappoint. "Oh, I realize it's a bit out of the blue." Twilight actually smiled, like she hadn't just put her heart out on the line. "Yeah, just a little," she offered Twilight an apologetic grin. "Could I have, a day to think about it?" "Sure, Rainbow Dash, no problem." Rainbow Dash was floored. Twilight sounded like she really meant that. No hitches in her voice, no drawing back like she'd just been struck, just no problem. Twilight's nerves had to be made of ice water or something even colder, like really cold ice water. Heat began to creep into Dash's cheeks. She really had to give Twilight credit. That amount of cool was beyond pretty much any pony else. "So, tomorrow then?" Twilight asked. "Yeah, tomorrow. Yeah." Dash sprang into the air and sped towards her home. Her head was spinning. Twilight liked her? Twilight wanted to date her? Why couldn't she answer? Man, I really need a nap. And that was the first chapter of Twilight's List, the unchecked item. I gotta say, I'm fairly happy with being recommended this particular fiction. I think we'll continue it. Tune in next week for Part 3 of Age and Part 2 of Twilight's List. For now, though, that concludes our program. Thank you very much for joining us. on FanFiction Fridays with Golden Microphone. I've been the titular character, and to sing us off, well, to see us off, I suppose, is Koroshi-Ya and item number 6 on his latest EP, Dirty Picture. See you all next week. Stay tuned.
Could dream of ways to see you, and I could close my eyes to dream, and I could fantasize about you, and tell the world what I believe. But whenever I'm not with you, and it's so hard for me to see, I need to see a picture of you, a special picture just for me, yeah. So take a dirty picture for me, take a dirty picture. Just take a dirty picture for me, take a dirty picture. Just send a dirty picture to me, send a dirty picture. Just send a dirty picture to me, send a dirty picture. Picture, picture, send a motherfucking dirty picture. Okay. Whenever you are gone, I just wanna be with ya. Please don't get me wrong, I just wanna see a picture. Take a dirty picture for me, take a dirty picture. Take a dirty picture for me, take a dirty picture. Whenever you are gone, I just wanna be here with ya. Please don't get me wrong, I just wanna see a picture. Take a dirty picture for me, take a dirty picture. Take a dirty picture for me, take a dirty picture. I could dream of ways to see you, and I could close my eyes to dream. Fantasize about this with you, but the way is never seen. So take a dirty picture for me, take a dirty picture. Just take a dirty picture for me, take a dirty picture. Just send the dirty picture to me, send the dirty picture. Just send the dirty picture to me, send the dirty picture. Fucking picture, bitch. Whenever you are gone, I just wanna be with ya. Please don't get me wrong, I just wanna see a picture. Take a dirty picture for me, take a dirty picture. Take a dirty picture for me, take a dirty picture. When you're all alone, boy, I got something to give ya. Will you play along if I take a dirty picture? I'll take a dirty picture for you, take a dirty picture. I'll take a dirty picture for you, take a dirty picture. Take a dirty picture for me, take a dirty picture. Just take a dirty picture for me, take a dirty picture. Just send a dirty picture to me, send a dirty picture. Just send a dirty picture to me, send a dirty picture. Snap. Snap, bitch! Oh god. Snap, bitchin', bitchin'. Bitchin'. Oh god. Snap. Yeah. And snap.
Dude, we've done some gay stuff together, but do you really think we had to end another EP off with a Kesha cover?
Dude, I'm the best in the fandom. Why is that a problem?
I know, it's just we did this with the Road to PCAU and people kind of got pissed off just a bit.
Who gives a fuck? They paid for it.
Well, this was supposed to be our big break, you know, like the whole non-pony serious album, and you finish it off with another Kesha cover.
Wait, our big break? It's my fucking big break.
Don't get up in arms at me. You're the one with the weird fetish for pop.
Well, you're the one with the weird fetish for little children. You just get fucking piece of shit.
Oh, that's too much. It's too much. Stay tuned. See you next time. Oh, Koroshi-Ya.